Welcome! On this DVD, we shall learn about the basics of chess endgames. What is a chess endgame? Endgames are positions when there are few pieces left on the board. Most of them are already exchanged. In order to win a chess game, you need to know how to checkmate, or on the other side, how to avoid it. That's what we're going to learn. In the first chapter, we shall see how to checkmate a lone king. Let's see. In our first position, we see a sample position where white has a king and a queen, while black only has a king. Now, in a situation like this, black's goal should be to try to stay in the middle of the board, as far from the walls, from the edge of the board as possible. Because the only way to checkmate the black king here is to force it to the edge of the board. Doesn't matter, first rank, A file, H file, or the 8th rank. That's our first goal. Step number 1 is forcing the king to one of those squares. Any of them, doesn't matter which one. Next step is we want to make sure the king will stay there, next to the wall, and cannot cross back out towards the middle of the board. Third step, only then we bring our king to help, because without the help of the king, it is impossible to checkmate the king. And then the last step, checkmate. Now, in this position, there are more than one ways to checkmate. But I'm going to show you first the most systematical way, the safest way. That's how I do the checkmate even today. Even though there may be quicker ways, the computer will tell there are faster checkmate, but nevertheless, I'd recommend you to learn it the safest, the systematic way. And let's see the moves now. The first move is Queen F3. As you can see, this move restricts the black king's mobility to a smaller space than it was before. Also, you can notice the distance between the white queen and the black king is like an L shape. Now, let's say black tries to stay in the middle of the board because that's where it's impossible to checkmate it. As we know, we need to force it to the side or end of the board. Let's see how that works. King E5, and now we're following the black king. Queen G4. As you're noticing, we're not giving checks, but making quiet moves, restricting the black king to smaller and smaller space. Black is still trying to stay in the middle of the board, and we are following, like a shadow, the black king. King E6 and Queen G5. We are taking away more and more space, squares from the king. King D6, and again we are following the king. Queen F5, king back to E7, and queen to G6. Again, the same distance between the white queen and the black king, that L shape. King D7, and again Queen F6, let's say King C7, and Queen E6. Now the black king has only one square to move to. Now here is when we have to be real careful. As soon as the king has only 1 or 2 squares to move to, we want to make sure we're avoiding stalemate, because stalemate ends the game in a draw. And that definitely would not be fun when we are ahead a queen. So white needs to be careful. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake by taking it a little bit longer and making checkmate in 3 moves instead of 2 or 5 instead of 3. However, if you make stalemate, the game is over and you lost half a point. It's a draw. Therefore, in this position, it would be a blunder, a big mistake, to play king to B7, because now the black king has no place to go whatsoever. That's when stalemate happens, when the king or none of the other pieces can move, and it's black's turn in this case. That's stalemate. So king B7 would be a big blunder. The correct move is step number 2, making sure the black king stays at the end of the board, at the edge of the board, by playing queen f7, still the same system, following the king. Now we made sure the black king has one square to move to at least, and that is king c8. And now step number 3, we are bringing the king to help. King a7. Again, we had to make sure the king has at least one square to move to. And again, white needs to be careful not to move to b7 or b8, then it would be stalemate in either case. However, move to b6, which leaves the c8 square clear for the black king, allowing white to checkmate in 2 ways. Try to figure that out. Either queen c7, where the white king is protecting the queen, therefore black cannot capture it, checkmate, or the queen can simply move down to e8, also with checkmate. After seeing the first example, here white's job is easier because the black king is already at the end of the board. So we can right away start with step number 2, namely making sure the black king stays there and doesn't run back out to the middle of the board. So first move is queen a7, cutting the king off, making sure it stays on the 8th rank. Now the black king can run either direction. And now we're ready for step number 3, which means bringing the king. And all black can do is go back and forth on the 8th rank, either to c8 or e8. Doesn't really matter because we are bringing the white king closer. King d8, and we're bringing the king closer, and king c8, we are bringing the king closer. Again, remember, this is where you should not play king e7 because that would be stalemate. That's the only thing you really need to watch out for. However, king d6, and after king d8, again, white has a number of ways to checkmate, namely 3 different ways to checkmate, either by simply moving down to a8, b8, or the third way, lining them all up on the same file with queen d7, checkmate. In this position, there is a small difference compared to our first 2 examples, namely that black has an extra pawn. Why that is important? Because now we don't need to worry about the danger of stalemate, because black has a pawn that can move. While it's true, we could capture that pawn right away with our queen in this position, but that would make the game last quite a bit longer. Since we don't need to worry about the stalemate, we can bring our king right away, king h2. It doesn't matter that the black king cannot move as long as there is another piece that can move. And the only piece that can move is the little pawn, a4. And now, again, we're bringing our king closer to help the queen. Black moves the pawn. And now we again have a choice of checkmate in 2 various ways, either queen f2 or queen d1.
Les saluda el gran maestro Damián Lemos para clasesdeajedrez.net. Primero espero que hayan podido disfrutar del video. Si quieren recibir más videos de nosotros, pueden simplemente suscribirse haciendo clic en el botón de abajo. También les recomiendo que se suscriban a mi curso gratis por email, donde voy a compartir con ustedes los 10 secretos para dominar como un gran maestro. Compartiré esos detalles que yo mismo utilicé para llegar al título de GM, cómo atacar, cómo defenderse, cómo pensar en el medio juego, cómo elaborar un repertorio de aperturas, y todo esto sin memorización ni sin libros tan complicados. Así que pueden suscribirse en la barra que tenemos aquí a la derecha y les prometo que no se van a arrepentir. Los saluda Damián de clasesdeajedrez.net y los voy a estar viendo en mis próximos videos. Gracias.